At 19, she unexpectedly married a millionaire cowboy. Discover the amazing gift that transformed her life forever. Sarah wiped the counter at the diner, sunlight streaming through the windows, warming her cheeks as an old pickup rumbled by outside. She felt the familiar flutter of hope for more than this life, yet bound to it, rooted in her small Texas town's expectations. Just days ago, she'd said "I do" to Jake, the charming cowboy whose wealth dazzled her like stars against a dark sky, yet doubt twisted in her stomach like knotted rope. All the whispers danced around her, and the judgments stung like bees, painting her as a gold digger, just another pretty face chasing money. Standing behind the counter pouring fresh coffee, Sarah wondered if she was fooling herself. Could she really escape her family's financial struggles and become the veterinarian she'd dreamed of? Each time she put on her apron, she felt the weight of her family's legacy pressing hard on her shoulders. She had learned to care for sick animals when her grandfather was alive, seeing his passion reflected in her own heart. But the reality of debts and responsibilities crept in like weeds on a ranch, suffocating her dreams. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The chaos of her internal conflict surged within her. Could she abandon her family for her own ambitions? Just when Jake urged her to pursue her degree and encouraged her with every spark he noticed in her eyes, the reality of her brother's ill fate unfolded in her mind like a dark cloud. An accident. The news crackled into her consciousness as piercing as sirens. Torn between the grave duty of sisterhood and the hopes for her future, fear coiled tightly around Sarah's heart. Her routine trips to the local vet felt like flickering candles in a storm, and as she found herself standing at the precipice of two worlds, she couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy that hung in the air like thick smoke. Would she ever be enough? A devoted sister and a budding veterinarian? The laughter and judgment from the townsfolk echoed in her mind, a cacophony she couldn't escape. Just as she picked up the phone to reach out to her brother, she stumbled upon a hidden secret. Her grandfather's old ranch, a sanctuary meant to heal broken animals. The discovery sparked something deep within, a flicker of direction amid the churning chaos. Could it be that this ranch, filled with the love of her grandfather, could serve as her guiding light during dark times? Pausing, breath caught in her throat, Sarah could feel her heart pounding against the weight of her choices. She stood at a crossroad, grappling with whether to shield her family or to pursue her passion. As she looked at the empty diner's tables, she realized that her journey was just beginning. Her hands trembled with the thought of what lay ahead, but just before she could take a step toward her future, her phone buzzed ominously with a chilling text from her brother, sending waves of anxiety crashing over her. The future she had glimpsed now hung by a thread, ready to unravel at any moment. What would she choose? Sarah stared at her phone, heart racing as she read her brother's text again. It was simple yet heavy. Need you at the hospital. Can't do this alone. The weight of his words pulled her into a vortex of dread, squeezing her chest like a vice. It was a call she could not ignore, a tether that tied her to family and obligation. Hey. Jake's voice was gentle but tinged with concern as he approached from behind, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. You okay? She could only nod, not trusting her voice. The warmth of his hand seeped into her skin, igniting sparks of comfort while her mind spun with chaotic thoughts. How could he be so calm when her world felt like it was fragmenting? Part of her wanted to lean on him, to let his stability wrap around her like a blanket, but another part screamed that dependence was weakness. I need to go, she finally managed to say, her tone more resolute than she felt. Let me drive you, Jake offered, a hint of insistence in his voice as if he sensed her turmoil. No. The word burst from her lips, fierce and unapologetic. I need to do this alone. She didn't just want to be Jake's wife at that moment. She needed to be Sarah, her own person facing her own struggles. The moment demanded her independence, a reality she was starting to embrace. As she drove through the familiar streets of her hometown, memories flooded her mind. Days spent alongside her brother, their laughter intertwining like vines around her heart. The laughter now felt distant, overshadowed by the specter of fear that loomed ahead. She pictured him lying in a hospital bed and her heart ached, twisting with guilt. Had she forsaken her family's needs in chasing her own? Were the dreams of a veterinarian worth the price of a fractured relationship? Pulling into the hospital parking lot, uncertainty coursed through her veins. She took a deep breath and forced herself to focus. She needed to be strong. She needed to be the sister he expected her to be, not just the girl who married a millionaire and forgot where she came from. Each step through the sterile corridors nudged her toward a realization. She couldn't save everyone, but she could be present. When she finally reached her brother's room, the sight of him hit her like a freight train. His face was pale, lips cracked from dehydration. Relief washed over her when he looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that told her he was battling through. "I'm so glad you're here," he whispered, his voice frail yet filled with affection. In that moment a shift occurred. She felt the rush of determination course through her, like a river bursting forth after a long, dry spell. This was what mattered: family, connection, and the unwavering support they could offer each other. As they spoke, she resolved to keep her dream alive, not separately from her family but intertwined with it. Each moment spent supporting her brother was also a step toward self-discovery. After an exhausting day at the hospital, she returned home, where shadows danced in the night. The ranch loomed in her mind, a place of healing, waiting for her to turn it into a sanctuary not just for animals but for herself as well. She could create a life that honored both her dreams and her obligations. But her phone buzzed again, a text that shattered the quiet calm of the night. "We need to talk. It's about Mom." Her heart dropped. What now? As the world around her spun once more, Sarah braced herself, unsure of what lay ahead but ready to face whatever came next. The turning points of her life were converging, demanding clarity in a time of chaos. What truths would she uncover? Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, the persistent hum of her phone vibrating against the nightstand. The message about their mother hung in the air like a dark cloud. She felt a familiar tightness in her chest, a blend of anticipation and dread. What could possibly be so urgent? The undercurrent of anxiety stirred a fierce resolve within her, igniting a need to understand her family's chaotic dynamics. She took a deep breath and thumbed a response. What happened? Her heart pounded, racing against time as she waited for the reply, her mind flooded with worst-case scenarios. They had always dealt with so much: her mother's struggles, her brother's health, the distance Sarah felt from both. She caught her reflection in the mirror, confronting the woman staring back at her. Was she still the same girl who had followed her heart to veterinary school? Or had she become someone too consumed by fear to choose her own path? When her phone rang just moments later, it felt like a sudden jolt. She quickly answered. "Hello?" "Sarah." Her dad's voice came through, shaky and emotional. "It's Mom. She needs help." His words struck like a lightning bolt, illuminating the tangled web of family obligation and personal aspiration. Suddenly, her own dreams felt trivial against the backdrop of her mother's apparent crisis. Why had she ever thought she could pursue her career without fully engaging with what awaited her at home? "I'll come right away," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. Defiance mingled with obligation as she quickly gathered her essentials: her veterinary books, her license forms, personal items that represented her independence. Though her mother needed her, she wouldn't abandon her own journey. Stepping out of the house, she felt the cool breeze wash over her, sharpening her senses. The night was dense with stars, yet all she could think about were the flashes of potential vulnerability in her family's future. The hospital was only 20 minutes away, but her mind raced through countless scenarios. Sitting alongside her brother, facing the fragility of their mother's health, and standing strong for them both. Each turn in the road felt like a reckoning. Did she have the strength to maintain her own identity while supporting her family? Would pursuing her veterinary dreams mean she was abandoning them? These questions clawed at her, each one more demanding than the last. But as irrational as it felt, she had begun to grasp her worth beyond simply being a daughter or a sister. Arriving at the hospital, she rushed through the fluorescent corridors, grounding herself with each step. The waiting room was a mix of anxious families, muffled conversations, and sterile smells that reminded her of the abyss she stood on the edge of. She spotted her brother first, his face streaked with exhaustion, yet his eyes held a flicker of determination. "Sarah!" He stood up, pulling her into an embrace that smelled faintly of antiseptic. "Mom needs you," he said softly, almost as if he feared the weight of his own words. Together they approached their mother's room, where the atmosphere shifted from sterile to intimate. There lay the woman who had sacrificed so much for them, and even in her pale state, the strength they loved flickered beneath the surface. Sarah inhaled deeply, her heart racing with the acknowledgement of their familial bond. This time, it wasn't about her dreams or independence. It was about facing the truth of her life and role within this family. Just as Sarah crossed the threshold, a familiar voice echoed in her memory. Her mother's words. "No matter what you pursue, always hold your head high." The conviction in those words settled into her heart, and as they gathered around their mother, a realization rippled through Sarah. She could be both, a dutiful daughter and an aspiring veterinarian. "Sarah," her brother murmured, pulling her from her thoughts. The time had come for an important conversation, one that would shape the future of their family. Would they face their mother's illness with unity, and could she emerge from the shadows ready to claim her life? The answer loomed ahead as Sarah braced herself for whatever truths awaited them. The journey toward healing was about to truly begin. Would she be ready to champion both her family and her dreams? The dim light of the hospital room flickered as Sarah crossed the threshold, the sterile smells overwhelming her senses. The sight of her mother, frail and fading, struck her harder than anticipated. It didn't just confront her, it demanded action. Her brother shifted beside her, his silent strength providing an anchor as they stepped closer. "She needs us," he said, his voice catching. It wasn't just a duty, but a plea, one that acknowledged the gravity of the moment. Sarah's heart raced, uncertainty tightening her chest. Could they, as a family, navigate this storm together? Her mother's words loomed in her mind, a call to arms that reverberated beyond their shared history. As they took their positions by her bed, she realized this wasn't just a moment of crisis. It was a pivotal junction in her life. "Hey, Mom," Sarah said softly, brushing her mother's hair from her forehead. "We're here." Her voice trembled with unexpressed fears, but she drew strength from her mother's lingering warmth, the essence of resilience. Her mother's eyes fluttered open. They shimmered with recognition, and in that brief gaze, Sarah glimpsed the powerful woman who had faced countless trials. That image clashed starkly with the hollow frailty of the current moment. For the first time, doubt crept into Sarah's mind. Was she prepared for the intensity of the journey ahead, both for her own aspirations and for the family she loved? "We're going to be okay," Sarah found herself whispering, more to convince herself than her mother. Yet even as she spoke those words, her mind turned toward her journey. How could she fulfill her promise of standing strong when her own dreams felt as fragile as her mother's state? The weight of responsibility clicked into place, coiling around her like a tightening noose. But what if this was exactly the moment she had dreaded, the intersection of duty and ambition? Feeling the pressure mount within, she knew she had to untangle her priorities. The conversations flowed organically, each family member contributing their fears and hopes while creating a tapestry of support. Sarah found her voice rising above the noise, asserting what she needed to express. "We need to face this together," she declared, her determination breaking through, energized by a surprising clarity. "Mom, you taught us to fight. Let's fight together." As her words settled in the room, she felt the embers of leadership ignite inside her. The confrontation that had gripped her heart shifted, echoing her realization that family is built on unity, strength, and unyielding love in the face of adversity. Perhaps she could embrace both worlds, weaving her aspirations as a veterinarian with her role as a daughter battling for her mother's recovery. Yet, even as clarity blossomed, shadows of fear remained. The lingering question haunted her. Would there be enough of her to go around? "Sarah, can I speak with you?" Her brother's voice cut through her thoughts, urgency lacing his tone as they stepped into the corridor. The world outside felt distant, but time was slipping away, and the uncertainty of their mother's condition loomed large. "What?" she asked, breathless, unsure what revelation awaited. "We have to talk about how we're going to handle everything. Mom's care, your study, future decisions." The weight of their familial responsibilities pressed heavily against her, forcing her to confront the intricate balance between the life she envisioned and the life rooted in family obligation. In that moment, she understood that this wasn't just a dialogue, it was a negotiation of her identity. Could she forge a path that upheld her commitments while honoring her ambitions? As they stood in the sterile hallway, Sarah could almost feel the chiseling away of her old self, shaping her into a determined woman learning to juggle conflicting desires. Each new piece of the puzzle ignited a fire within her, a sense of purpose previously dormant. "We can't let this break us," she finally declared, a newfound conviction coursing through her veins. But just as her brother nodded in agreement, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, what sacrifices would they need to confront? Would resilience be enough to hold them together? And in this moment of urgency, her resolve deepened, focusing inward to discover not just a daughter's devotion, but the heart of a future veterinarian ready to face the ultimate test. The next question lingered like static in the air. What's the first step to turn dreams into actions? As they prepared to tackle the uncertainties ahead, a new chapter demanded to be written, one filled with as much hope as it did fear. Would they face their challenges united, or be divided by the weight of their separate goals? The sterile brightness of the hallway contrasted sharply with the turmoil churning within Sarah. As they leaned against the cool wall, her brother's expression was a complex interplay of worry and resolve, mirroring the conflict inside her. "We can't just wait for answers, we need a plan," he urged, grounding her frantic thoughts. "That's what I was thinking," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The urgency of the situation ignited a practical side of her, one keen on alignment, aligning her studies in veterinary medicine with the realities of her family commitments. The challenge lay not just in balancing priorities, but in proving to herself that she could be both daughter and professional. "Let's consider what we know," her brother suggested, and as they began to brainstorm, the initial surge of fear transformed into something more manageable, a strategy. Sarah outlined her school schedule and potential gaps where she could fit in extra study sessions, allowing her to remain focused on her aspirations even amid her family crisis. Each point they covered felt like tethering her ambitions to a lifeline. In the back of her mind, however, the thought loomed, how long could she sustain this? Would academic success come at the cost of her emotional stability? Each time she revisited her mother's fragile state, uncertainty blossomed anew. But within that uncertainty, Sarah's awareness sharpened. "Maybe I could volunteer at the clinic nearby after classes," she postulated aloud, thinking perhaps practical experience would keep her anchored. It was a move laden with personal stakes, getting closer to her future career while remaining proactive about her mother's health. "That's a great idea," her brother encouraged, picking up on her enthusiasm. "And it shows Mom we're both committed. Let's make sure we have this figured out to discuss it with her." Yet the anxiety of sharing these plans with her mother sent a tremor through her resolve. What if her mother, confined to a hospital bed, felt like a burden? What if her condition dimmed Sarah's ability to pursue a fulfilling career? Each potential backlash played against the backdrop of her aspirations, acting like shards digging deeper into her consciousness. "Hey, Sarah," her brother's voice pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. "Promise me you won't lose yourself in all of this. You have your dreams for a reason, and Mom would want you to chase them." Her brother's plea reverberated through her, crystallizing her purpose even more. "You're right," she acknowledged, although doubt snaked back in. "But what if I fail to juggle everything? It's not about perfection, it's about progress," he countered. We'll find our rhythm. Progress. The concept echoed in her mind, transforming her doubts into a plan of action. She needed tangible steps, decisive moments that would propel her not just as a daughter, but as the veterinarian she aspired to become. Next, they discussed scheduling shifts and caregiving, when one would sit with their mother while the other attended to schoolwork or clinical experience. The coordination required a meticulous, realistic assessment of their available resources, a deep dive into whether they could truly pull it off together. In that moment, Sarah felt the flicker of determination sparking within her. The shadows of doubt never truly faded, but she understood they could coexist with her ambition. Taking control demanded more than resolve. It needed a willingness to adapt and a recognition that strength flowed from vulnerability. They returned to their mother's room, Sarah booming with newfound energy as she entranced her brother with their plans. But as her gaze found her mother's frail figure, a heavy weight settled in her chest once more. Could this be a source of motivation for everyone, or would it fray further under the strain? As the conversation shifted, Sarah resolved to focus on what lay ahead. With each decision they orchestrated, she was not merely navigating a family crisis, she was embarking on a journey of growth, armed with choices that reflected her evolving identity. And just as her mother smiled, a flicker of hope igniting in her weary eyes, a daunting thought crystallized in Sarah's mind. Was she truly prepared for the sacrifices that awaited her? This wasn't merely about handling her education and familial duties. It was about redefining her life's trajectory. The truth awaited her, lurking uncomfortably in the shadows. Would she be capable of embracing all that her new path demanded? The questions echoed silently as they steeled themselves for what was next. A hospital procedure looming, and for Sarah, the urgency of embracing change had never felt more profound. What lay ahead would test not just her commitment, but her core passion as well. And at the heart of this transformation was a question that filled the air with charged electricity. How far would she stretch before she might break? The sterile walls of the hospital room loomed around Sarah as she watched her mother's chest rise and fall in the rhythm of labored breaths. Each contraction of the ventilator echoed the decision she was about to make, a decision that could alter the course of her life. She had established a plan, a delicate balance of family obligations and her pursuit of veterinary medicine. Yet outside this room, reality felt like an impending storm. "Mom," she began with an awkwardness that rippled through her voice. "I want to help, not just here but also pursue my dream." The words hung in the air like a fragile thread, waiting to be accepted or severed. Her mother's eyes flickered open, a spark of recognition breaking through the haze of medications. "Sweetheart," she managed, her voice a whisper laced with fatigue, "you don't have to sacrifice everything for me." "It's not a sacrifice," Sarah corrected, though her heart clenched at the admission. "I want to do both. I can volunteer at the clinic nearby, gain experience after classes." Each word was like a brick, defining the structure of her new reality. "Volunteering is important, but don't forget to take care of yourself." Despite the concern evident in her mother's expression, Sarah could see pride mixed with sorrow, the conflict that came with enduring love. "I won't," she promised. But internally, the weight of that promise felt unbearable. The looming specter of her academic pressures danced on the precipice of her consciousness, taunting her with uncertainty. In the days that followed, she fell into a precarious routine, a whirlwind of classes interspersed with hospital visits. Her brother's steady support bolstered her through the chaos, providing a rhythm that almost felt sustainable. Yet the exhilaration of her newfound ambition quickly revealed its edges. The moment she secured her volunteer position, a layer of anxiety began to unveil itself. Would she truly be competent enough to help? Would working with animals lead her to the fulfillment she sought, especially while her personal life unraveled around her? It nagged at her relentlessly, leaving her questioning her every move. One afternoon, amidst the cacophony of barking dogs and the smell of antiseptic, Sarah saw a particularly anxious golden retriever, shaking and cowering against the wall. Something flickered inside her, an instinct built from hours of study and the unspoken urgency of her own situation. She approached slowly, speaking softly, crooning gently. In that moment, she wasn't just a volunteer, she was a lifeline. As the dog began to relax under her touch, a revelation washed over her. She felt competence coursing through her veins, a connection she hadn't fully recognized until now. This was what she had been preparing for. A part of her blossomed. She was capable of more than just juggling responsibilities. She could create impact no matter how chaotic her universe felt. Yet each time she witnessed the healing of a frightened animal, she was haunted by thoughts of her mother's health. The juxtaposition of joy in her work and sorrow at home clawed at her heart, leaving her caught in an emotional crossfire. Was there a point where one would inevitably overshadow the other? With each shift at the clinic, Sarah's internal conflict grew more acute. The support of her brother kept her grounded, but alone in quiet moments, doubt gnawed at her. How far could she push her limits? She could see how fragile her aspirations were, held together by thin strands of willpower and hope. The day of her first successful patient assessment brought a moment of clarity that terrified her. She was entering the realm of her dreams, but it required a steadfastness she feared she did not possess. As she ruminated on the consequences of her choices, she recalled her mother's gentle insistence to care for herself. Returning home that evening, Sarah faced her reflection. A blend of exhaustion and burgeoning confidence. But the woman staring back at her was unclear, and the question lingered dangerously close to the surface. Was she genuinely ready to face the potential loss ahead? The gravity of her circumstances intensified as she prepared to confront defining moments in her evolving identity. There was a choice awaiting her, a precipice that demanded clarity. Would she continue to push forward, redefining her limits? Or would the weight of her obligations pull her back into the shadows? The stakes felt impossibly high as she considered the future, knowing now more than ever that her journey would not be solitary. Her mother's enduring spirit and her own insatiable desire for growth were intertwined. Yet, outside those walls, the unknown loomed larger. With every decision Sarah made, the boundaries of her potential stretched even further. But soon she would face a truth she could no longer ignore. What if the next decision demanded everything she was? Would she step into that fear, or allow it to consume her? The answers awaited her, suspended in the crucible of choices yet to come, each tinged with the soft reverberation of a distant, foreboding challenge. Sarah's hands trembled as she clasped the steering wheel, each furrow in her brow deepening with the weight of unmade choices. The road to the clinic wound through a landscape echoing her rapid evolution. The sun cast a golden hue over the fields, yet she felt as though shadows loomed over her spirit. Internally, she grappled with the assurance of her skills at the clinic, the nascent realization of her potential, and the relentless worry regarding her mother's health that seemed to increase with each day. Driving became a ritual of contemplation. She analyzed every interaction from her shifts, the way she comforted anxious pets, the satisfaction of a well-done task, and the sometimes insurmountable urge to race back home to check on her mother. Balancing both worlds felt like walking a tightrope, an exhilarating yet terrifying endeavor, where one misstep had the power to plunge her into chaos. Upon arriving, the familiar sterile scent of disinfectant and the sound of barking greeted her. She inhaled deeply, grounding herself before opening the door. The frantic atmosphere of the clinic resonated with life, and for her, it was a sanctuary. Yet beneath the surface lay a haze of doubt. Every successful assessment cast a shadow of reflection. Could she maintain this momentum while her family life frayed? Her mentor at the clinic, Dr. Ramirez, had taken note of Sarah's growing confidence. "You have a gift, Sarah," she often said, her words a balm on Sarah's worry. "Never underestimate how your connection with these animals translates to your potential." But the weight of personal obligations often felt like an anchor preventing her from fully embracing that potential. Today, however, felt different. As Sarah stepped into the examination room, she found herself confronted by a scrappy terrier shaking in the corner. This animal mirrored her internal conflict, hesitant yet desperate for care. She approached slowly, extending her hands, heart pounding with determination. "Hey there, buddy. Let's figure this out together, she whispered, channeling the resolve she had cultivated through her interactions. As she worked, a swell of confidence enveloped her. This small creature responded to her calm demeanor. Its shaking slowed, and it eventually leaned into her touch. Nourishment came from this connection, igniting a resolve within her. She was meant for this. The moment crystallized, it was more than skill, it was affirmation of her identity. Behind her, Dr. Ramirez observed silently, a knowing look in her eyes. Once the terrier seemed settled, Sarah took a step back, allowing the warmth of accomplishment to wash over her. The satisfaction bubbled with a reminder of things unsaid. I need to tell her, Sarah muttered under her breath, a newfound clarity sharpening her focus. As the day progressed, her mind oscillated between the clinic and her mother's fragile condition. Each ringing phone further tethered her, but there was something brewing within her, a resolve emerging like a phoenix from the deep uncertainties. Returning home that evening, the house was quiet, the shadows lengthening on the walls as twilight approached. Sarah moved towards her mother's room, each step heavy, yet resolute. This was the moment she realized she could not afford to linger in the shadows of indecision. There was strength to be found in vulnerability. She needed to confront the emotional fortitude required to share her aspirations with her mother. Mom, she called softly, pushing the door open. The sight of her mother, frail and resting, plunged a sharpened pain into her heart. Yet, within her surged an unwavering ambition. Sarah took a seat beside her mother's bed, seeing the fading colors in the world outside the window, and decided that this was the juncture for a conversation long overdue. Can we talk? She started, courage surging through her voice. She would share her dreams, her struggles, and most importantly, seek her mother's guidance, bridging the gap between their separate paths. The response was a gentle nod, an invitation that resonated within Sarah, amplifying her determination to pursue a future where she could nurture both her dreams and her family. As the conversation began, a shadow crossed her mother's face, one filled with both pride and concern. In that moment, Sarah could sense the stakes rising again. Would her mother support her ambitions fully, or would the weight of her illness introduce an insurmountable barrier? The air thickened with anticipation as Sarah prepared to navigate this pivotal moment, aware that the answers she sought might reverberate far beyond the confines of that room. But she was ready to confront her fear, knowing that this journey would demand everything she had. And as uncertainty lingered in the air, a slam echoed through the house. The door had been unexpectedly flung open, heralding the entrance of someone who would challenge everything Sarah thought she knew about her future. Sarah's heart raced, the sound of the door slamming rattling the fragile grip she had on the moment. In stepped David, her childhood friend, unexpectedly back from a long absence. His presence was a jolt, shaking loose fragments of her unwavering determination. He had always been a wild card in her life, embodying a carefree spirit that both attracted and repelled her. "What are you doing here, David?" she blurted, barely able to maintain her composure. "Thought I'd surprise you," he replied, his voice filled with the familiar easy laughter that used to echo through their shared adventures. But as she glanced at her mother, who lay quietly in her bed, she felt the laughter fade into an uneasy silence. This was not a time for surprises. This was a time for honesty. David's expression shifted. He noticed her tension, the way her hands trembled in her lap. "Hey, is everything okay?" His eyes darted between Sarah and her mother, concern flickering across his face. In that moment, her carefully constructed wall of emotional control threatened to crumble. The weight of her ambitions and fears surged forth in a tide. "No, everything is not okay," she exclaimed, frustration mingling with vulnerability. "I'm trying to navigate my career while watching my mother's health decline, and I just don't know what to do anymore." The air turned electric as David leaned forward, his brows knitting together. "You're doubting yourself, aren't you?" It was a question steeped in understanding, his words echoing the shadows that lurked in her mind. "Some days I wonder if I'm cut out for this, if I'm good enough. At the clinic or with everything happening at home," she confessed, a tremor in her voice betraying the confidence she had displayed moments before. She sensed the expectation in the room. David wasn't just a friend at that moment, he was a mirror reflecting her fears. David shifted his weight, a thoughtful smile breaking through his concerned gaze. "You are good enough, Sarah. You've always been. You have this way with animals, and it's clear to everyone at the clinic," he said, determination building in his tone. "But it isn't just about the clinic, is it? It's also about your mom." A knot twisted in her stomach. There it was, the vulnerable truth she'd been avoiding. She hadn't wanted to admit how deeply her mother's illness affected her ambition, how it sometimes felt as if helping animals was a betrayal of her family. "I don't want her to think I'm abandoning her," she said, her voice wavering. "I want to be there for her. But I also want a future. Sometimes I feel like I'm tearing in two." David leaned back, the air around them thickening with the moment's intensity. "What if I told you there's a way to do both?" he offered, the sparkle of mischief glinting in his eyes. "You might not even know it yet, but there's an opportunity I stumbled upon, something that could merge your love for animals with a new path that supports your family." Confusion washed over Sarah like a cold wave. "What do you mean? Come with me. Just for a few days. There's a chance for you to work with a wellness program for animals. And it could be just the thing to give you the freedom to help your mom." Each word he spoke ignited a spark of hope within her, colliding violently with her fears. Could she really step outside her comfort zone, venture down a new path that married her passions with her obligations? The thought filled her with a mix of excitement and dread. As Sarah's mind raced, she stole a glance at her mother, whose frail form was a constant reminder of fragility. This was not merely a decision about opportunity. It was about her family, and everything rested heavily on the choice she might soon make. "David, I need to think about this," she started, but uncertainty clung to her words like fog. "Think fast, Sarah," he said, cutting through her hesitation. "You might be on the brink of something extraordinary, but opportunity doesn't wait for anyone." And in that moment, Sarah understood the gravity of her predicament. She was poised for a new choice: embrace an unexpected opportunity, or remain tethered to her existing fears. The road ahead was murky, yet the thrill of possibility stirred within her. As she opened her mouth to respond, a sudden realization coursed through her. This was not just about a decision or an opportunity. It was about defining who she wanted to be, both for herself and her family, amid the shadows of uncertainty. But what would she choose? The moment hung in the air, charged with potential as she prepared to confront not just David, but the very essence of her evolving identity. Sarah stood frozen, caught in the crosswinds of opportunity and obligation. The soft hum of her mother's breathing filled the room, grounding her but also amplifying the tumult within. How cruel it felt, the prospect of a bright future calling to her while her present loomed dark and heavy. David watched her with an intensity that felt both comforting and unnerving. "You know," he began, his voice gentle, "everyone has doubts. It's what you do with them that counts." She lowered her gaze, searching the carpet for answers that would never surface there. His words, while well-intended, felt like a trite bandage on a gaping wound. Yet a flicker of defiance ignited within her. What if he was right? What if stepping into this new role could provide not just relief for her family but also a way to reclaim her own identity? Taking a deep breath, Sarah glanced up. "What do you know about this wellness program?" The question was deliberate. She wanted to ground her swirling thoughts in something tangible. "It's a collaboration with veterinarians focused on holistic approaches to animal care," David explained, enthusiasm lighting his features. "They're looking for an assistant who can communicate well with both animals and caregivers. It's perfect for you." His enthusiasm was infectious, but doubt gnawed at her. "And how does this align with my life here? If my mother needs help?" "Helping her doesn't mean sacrificing yourself, Sarah. You've been so focused on her needs that you've put yours in a box." His words struck a nerve. They mirrored her own suppressed thoughts. Why was it so difficult to balance her mother's health with her own aspirations? "I'm not a child anymore, David. Real life isn't just dreams. she countered, hesitation creeping back into her voice. What if I take this opportunity and things go wrong here? Things are already wrong, Sarah. His gaze sharpened, piercing through her defenses. You're drowning in the weight of it all. What if this is your chance to find a new rhythm? You might discover hidden strengths. The idea settled in her heart, both exhilarating and terrifying. What strengths? She had always been the dependable daughter, the animal lover who healed others, but often neglected herself. Could there be a version of her that thrived in both realms? I'll have to think seriously about it, she murmured, feeling both the pull of possibility and the chains of responsibility. Take your time, but don't let it slip away, David advised patiently. Life moves quickly, and you don't want to be left wondering, what if? As he spoke, Sarah felt the weight shift within her, contemplating the path forward. She could picture herself, fully alive under the sun's warm embrace, working in a vibrant environment dedicated to animal wellness. Yet shadows of doubt still loomed over her thoughts. She rose from her seat, filled with a sudden determination. I'll come with you. The words came out before she could second-guess herself. David broke into a wide smile. Really? That's fantastic. But the joy on his face contrasted sharply with the uncertainty coursing through her veins. What if I can't handle it? What if... Just listen to your instincts. His encouragement hovered in the air between them. And if you falter, I'll be right there with you. It felt surreal, the prospect of stepping away from her predictable life. What awaited her beyond her mother's room? Could this be her opportunity to rediscover herself among animals and new challenges? Each step toward that newfound life felt like breaking free from her own self-imposed chains. With a last look at her mother, Sarah felt a swell of resolve, but doubt still clung to her. The next few days would shape her future, carving new roles and responsibilities in her heart and mind. The doctor's urgent knock on the door interrupted her thoughts, and Sarah turned, eager to face yet another uncertainty. What if I can't do this? She whispered to herself, heart pounding. But as she opened the door, she heard David's voice behind her, reminding her that every transformation began with a single step into the unknown. Sarah, I'm ready when you are, he said, anticipation lacing his tone. She could sense a palpable shift in the air, the current of fate pushing her along. Taking a breath, she faced the door again, feeling the weight of her own decisions looming, a secret urge for liberation coiling tighter in her chest. Were the risks worth the journey ahead? Only time would tell if she was truly ready to embrace both the challenges of her past and the promise of a future at her fingertips. It was time to discover who she truly was, and how far she could soar when the chains fell away. But as the door before her creaked open, a new worry settled deep in her gut. What if the world outside was different than what she imagined? Sarah stood at the threshold of the hospital room, uncertainty churning within her. The bright lighting contrasted sharply with the dim shadows of doubt lingering in her mind. She was no longer just the girl who married the millionaire cowboy. She was a woman confronting the complexities of family, ambition, and her own identity. As she took a deep breath and stepped inside, she met her mother's weary gaze, a blend of love and concern shimmering through fatigue. Sarah, her mother whispered, you've been overwhelmed. You don't have to bear it all alone. In that moment, Sarah felt the weight of her mother's unconditional love pull her back from the brink of self-imposed isolation. It was not just a reminder of her duty as a daughter, it was a nudge toward embracing her own truths. Mom, she said, determined yet tender, I want to help you, but I also want to pursue my passion for veterinary care. I'm going to take an opportunity that David shared with me. Her mother's expression shifted from apprehension to a soft smile. You're ready for this, aren't you? It wasn't a question. It was an affirmation. And in that moment, Sarah felt a surge of clarity and purpose. Yes, I am, she declared, her voice steady. I can balance this with my responsibilities at home. I can be there for you and chase my dreams. Together they discussed her plans, each word building confidence. Her mother listened with a prideful glimmer in her eyes, grounding Sarah in her decision. For the first time, they identified a new rhythm, Sarah could attend classes, volunteer at the clinic, and still carve out time to support her family. The transformation within Sarah solidified with every passing day. She embraced her new role at the wellness program, thriving under the guidance of mentors who saw her potential. The once hesitant veterinary assistant emerged as a competent professional, healing animals and nurturing relationships with pet owners. In contrast to her early panic, she began to turn her worries into strategies, organizing her time meticulously to ensure she was giving her attention to both her family and her career. Her mother's health improved partly as Sarah's presence grew steadier, blossoming out of love rather than obligation. They leaned on one another, both the caretaker and the cared for, learning from each other's strengths. Feedback from colleagues affirmed what Sarah had been feeling deep down. She was more than capable. Dr. Ramirez formally recognized her contributions to the clinic, and those accolades became stepping stones rather than the pinnacle of her journey. Each positive reinforcement dimmed the shadows of her insecurities, reshaping her self-perception while igniting her ambition. Months down the line, standing in the clinic amidst the hustle and bustle, she felt an unshakable confidence settle over her. The adrenaline of success coursed through her as she examined a Labrador with a sprained paw. As she skillfully reassured the nervous dog and its anxious owner, she realized that she had finally become the person she had always aspired to be, a competent veterinarian in her own right. Not just a wife, not just a sister, but an embodiment of her dreams. As she stepped outside to greet the warm Texas sun, a familiar excitement filled her, the thrill of possibility. The shadows of self-doubt had retreated, replaced with a clear vision of her ambitions intermingled with her family obligations. Even the delicate balancing act no longer felt daunting. She had found her footing. Driving home with a sense of fulfillment, she felt the tug of her family waiting for her. Sarah knew she was not just navigating through obligations. She was crafting a life defined by her passions and the people she loved. Each moment now reflected a deeper understanding of her identity. She was whole. Arriving home, she rushed to her mother's side, the warmth between them rippling with unspoken appreciation. "We're going to be just fine," Sarah declared with newfound empowerment, her mother's hand resting upon hers in shared triumph. The journey had transformed them both. Sarah had achieved what she once thought unattainable. She had conquered doubt, demonstrated resilience, and maintained her family ties while pushing toward her goals. All those swirling fears and complexities began to fade. They no longer dictated her identity. With every interaction, Sarah emerged not only as a daughter and a sister but as an accomplished professional, anchored by confidence and clarity. As Sarah gazed into her mother's eyes, a smile graced both their lips. In this fleeting moment of connection, she understood. She had not just embraced possibilities, she had shaped them into reality. Now this is not just a moment of victory, it is a calling to you. If you believe in the power of overcoming obstacles and seeking your true self, subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support our journey together. Comment your thoughts and reactions to this conclusion, and share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering transformation. You need to support our narrative because true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the value of sharing and engagement. Don't wait even one more second.